Hello and welcome to Monday's edition of Movie News here at MBE. We all hope you had a lovely weekend and welcome to our YouTube followers and our Twitch followers. I am joined, as always, with John C. Walsh.
Yes.
And we've got a few things that were dropped over the weekend, John, so we might be a little bit behind with other YouTube channels, but we get there in the end because we don't work Saturdays and Sundays here at MBE.
No.
Now, AMC has lost over $500,000 due to theatres closing. John, it's more bad news for movie theatres as AMC Entertainment reveals its whopping financial losses as a result of the pandemic-related cinema closes. Now, I'm just going to read a little bit of this article from Screen Rant. We're actually going to be Screen Rant-arama tonight. Most of our topics, if not all, are all coming from Screen Rant. So thank you.
All of the other news publications are absolutely useless.
Well, they're all doing all these fan art stuff just now, which is very good to look at, John. It's very interesting. Kind of gets the sort of imagination going, you know, but it's not much to talk about for guys like ourselves that do YouTube themed entertainment things like this. But AMC Entertainment has lost over $500 million in profits due to ongoing theatre closures. Since closing its theatre chains back in March as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, the world has become an especially difficult place for cinema. It was originally hoped that many theatre chains as well as independent theatres could reopen on time to salvage the busy summer movie season, but so far the effects of COVID-19 pandemic continue to persist. As of this writing, only 3 major releases are still stick to a traditional summer theatrical release model. New Mutants, Christopher Nolan's highly anticipated Tenet, and time-travelling sequel Bill and Ted Face the Music. Unlike New Mutants and Tenet, however, Bill and Ted will be released on VOD the same day as its theatrical release, underscoring the substantial effect that the pandemic has had on how and where movies are seen. Throughout all of this, the financial losses continue to escalate for theatres, and despite plans by major chains like AMC to reopen in mid to late August, business likely will never be the same again for cinemas around the world. Now that's damning, that last sentence there, John, if that is the case, but you can't put a date on these things.
No.
And you've got to take into account human behaviour as well. We're seeing it here in Scotland, we've seen it here in the northeast of Scotland. Some people just can't behave themselves.
No.
They can't follow the rules. They won't follow the rules. So this pandemic will continue, and it will continue until people understand it and understand why there's rules in there.
Yep.
You can't obviously manage everything. You know, you've got to live your life to an extent. You can't live in a cave and lock yourself away.
Some do.
You've got to, get
mostly
out
in Asia.
and do your shopping, etc. You know, these.
And we've got to get out and watch movies, Stephen, once again, and get back to backing theatres.
Yeah,
and get back to backing big studios and their ballsy releases like Tenet.
Businesses likely
$250 million.
will never be the same again for cinemas around the world. John, it's life changing if that's the case.
It is life changing,
and
in every regard.
Are starting to take note of this. That's why Bill and Ted will feature in cinemas and VOD simultaneously. But then you've got films like Tenet and Christopher Nolan's, I don't want to say stubbornness, he wants to do it his way. I did it my way, as the great man said, and he is going to do it his way.
Sounded a bit like Partridge,
yeah.
I did it my
Sponsored by Dettol. But what's your take on this anyway, John? I've spoken off here.
Stephen, I think you're right, and I think they're right, that this could change things forever. It's like the Joker says, there's no going back. I've seen what's going on out there, and I think there's no going back. You've changed things forever. Well, this pandemic has potentially changed things forever for movie theatres and for the entertainment industry as a whole. When you see a company the size of AMC, who I believe are under the same parent company as Odeon Pictures over here, absolutely monstrous sized theatrical theatre company, whatever you want to call it. Second for me, or maybe even on an even par with Cineworld, and I believe they are Regal over in the States. They're like the 2 big heavyweight theatre companies. When you see them losing ridiculous figures like this, I think they posted a $3 billion loss for the first quarter of 2020. Over $500 million in profits have been lost because of the ongoing theatre closures. That's terrifying figures for cinema going, the cinema going experience, people who love going to theatres, terrifying figures for the theatre companies themselves. And what's even more terrifying is the notion it's starting to go into certain studios' heads, the likes of Universal, Disney with Mulan as well, starting to test the waters with releasing it on VOD and then onto streaming services, maybe staggered releases, rental figures and whatnot, circumventing the actual theatres themselves. We thought it was a sort of standalone case with Universal making the deal with AMC. Incidentally, you can now understand why AMC were so keen to get into bed with Universal, even if it meant cutting off their nose to spite their face, because they are making ridiculous losses. They're in trouble, and if they don't sort of halt this process by doing some sort of deal with a company like Universal, then they could potentially go bust. They could go out of business completely.
Yeah.
So it's terrifying, man. It really is. And I for companies like this, it's not terrifying for me. It's not going to change my life anyway.
No.
Because I'm sure another theatre company will pop up. But I feel for all of the people whose jobs are potentially on the line here if this continues on indefinitely into the future. And we don't know when this is going to end, so this could be the new norm for another 6 months, a year. The Spanish flu pandemic, which was the last proper big pandemic we had in 1918, it lasted 2 years. We're not even a year into this one. If it's 2 years, companies like this could hit the wall because this is going to be a recurring theme. $500 million losses, $500 million losses. And then you have the issue with people perhaps being not so keen to go into theatres again and risk their lives for smaller
densely
releases.
Populated areas as well, John.
Yeah.
This is,
and then they can't even open them in New York and LA and whatnot.
Over here in the UK, it's sometimes hard, to sort of pinpoint demographics in the areas we're talking here. I think Scotland, Wales, and Ireland are really giving England it tight at the moment, but I don't think that's very fair, John, because England has a bigger population than these three countries put together, and they are densely populated.
Yeah,
America again, you're talking times 100 or even more.
Stephen, there's some states over in the States though, sort of lessly populated states, which can open up theatres and they can get bums back in seats, but they're not going to make the money to make these movies profits. The profits lie in the big metro areas like LA and New York and Chicago and places like that, and this virus is very much still spreading around in these places. Therefore the theatres remain closed. Therefore studios like Disney and Universal and Warner Brothers and Lionsgate, Sony, they will be less inclined to push them out. The big movies which will draw people back into theatres, risking their lives perhaps to do so, they'll be less inclined to put them out if they can't put them out in big metro areas like the aforementioned New York, over here, London and whatnot.
Yeah.
So they can get them out in lessly sparsely populated areas, but it's not going to work. So we have to get
that's not the way the businesses think. You know that let's be honest, they don't really care how much Glasgow's making. No. Globally.
No, it's the big markets.
It's the big markets, John.
London.
You're right, and it also begs the question: is what do they do? If this,
I have no idea.
If you think, I mean, I'm not asking you for a solution here, John, but what is the answer? Because a lot of studios are sort of digging their heels in, saying we will not release on VOD. We're not doing it. We're just not doing it.
It just can't. A $250 million budget, 300 to break even. It can't release on VOD.
So the last pandemic we had lasted 2 years.
2 years.
Our studios only wait that long to release these films.
I don't think they can.
Do you think they can afford to do that?
No, I think.
So what's the answer?
I think the likes of Warner Brothers, Stephen, will watch very closely how Disney operates with Mulan. If people are willing to spend $30 to watch it in their house, see what the numbers are. If they make a big enough profit, then they will start doing their own little tests with smaller budget movies, and if they're a success and it starts catching on, sad for the theatres though it is, and the theatre going experience, I think they will kick them to the curb, and we will see movies like Tenet. If there's enough success, and I don't think there ever will be enough success for Tenet to get the money it needs on VOD, but if there is, then I think you'll see more and more movies making a jump to streaming VOD. I don't know where the hell the theatre companies go after this, Stephen. If they can't get this under control and get people back in numbers, a lot of these companies are going to die. The smaller independent ones, primarily, I think, although they may actually be shielded more from it than the big ones, because they're not, it's quite a big sort of expenses or something, or maybe staff to look after. So we may see the likes of Glasgow Film Theatre, which is the sort of not the snooty and the posh one, but it's the sort of independent, cracking little theatre we have in this city. They may actually have a buffer and survive more than the sort of Cineworlds over here, Odeon, Showcase. But I don't know where they go, Stephen. I don't know. It could be the end of the cinema going experience for the.
Well, that was the next thing I was going to talk about,
future.
John. Is obviously the experience of going to the theatre now. It's really going to test the passionate fans out there.
Yeah.
The ones that do like to go to theatre, and I do include ourselves in that.
And how's it going to impact, Stephen, the actual unlimited cards and stuff like that? If these companies are posting losses, are they going to be able to offer the unlimited experience to obviously people who go like us on the regular to theatres? This is another thing. We may see the loss of unlimited cards, and then you're having to pay full whack every time you go, and then that really is going to push your passion for film.
It depends on the business logistics as well, John. It depends where studios make decisions on how they're going to get their films out there to the public. And then the next sort of hurdle would be for the Cineworld or whatever, over here, like ourselves being members, how do we keep the loyalty, of the people, the members from previous, and what do we offer them, like you said, and it could be a case of the likes of AMC in the UK, USA, Cineworld over here, maybe having to do deals with streaming channels, maybe have to work out something to say, listen, we've got loyal customers who are willing to pay the money. If there's no other choice, and I hate to say this because I love going to the cinema, I know you love going to the cinema, John, it's great to sit with a bunch of people that are all interested in the same thing.
Unless they're stinking, in which case well, I've not encountered
that's
many
always
people
a
like that,
possibility, but
hygiene seems to be better in Scotland
for now anyway.
Not so much Malta though, when I went there.
But I think it really just it's a test of the sort of the fans, the people, the cinema goers, whether or not they will want to part with the cash. You'll get people that might want to see the odd movie here, but there's going to come a point. Now, Mulan is a good sort of way to start this test, if you like. It's a guinea pig. I don't think Mulan and the makers of Mulan are very happy about this, but I don't think they've got a choice. But there's going to come a point where you're going to have to make a choice. And if you're talking $30, what's that over here? £22 or something like that.
I think it'll probably be light for light, Steve.
Yeah, so
£30.
You're going to have to make you're going to have to make a choice. You're going to have to make a decision when you've got maybe about 4 or 5 films all coming out that 1 month, because there's going to be a backlog. There is going to be a backlog early 2021, I think, if things continue the way they're going. But who knows?
Stephen, if it all gets under control, getting into the new year, we get a vaccine or better courses of treatment, and then people are surviving in greater numbers, it becomes less of an issue even if you are infected, then I think we will see the light at the end of the tunnel for theatre companies. I think because, as you did say, all of these big releases that are being pushed back, there's going to be a ridiculous amount of blockbusters, event movies next year. If they can just wait it out and survive until next year, and if things get back to a semblance of normalcy, as seems to be the new word, not normality, then I think we will see these theatre companies making huge profits next year. It's just about tidying it out. And look, man, I seen something today on another channel where there's some sort of thing disappeared. I can't even recall what it is. The Paramount something, where it's theatre companies been able to open up their own, or studios been able to open up their own theatre chains.
It's an old law, isn't it?
There's an old law sort of fell into, it's went away essentially. It ceased to exist. So we could see perhaps studios working in tandem with companies like AMC and maybe doing hybrid theatres, and then they maybe give them a little share of the profits. They get more of the money, the theatres, the studios, and then everyone's a winner essentially. Perhaps we'll see a new dawn where they run concurrently on VOD in theatres, the studios and the theatres work in tandem even more closely, like AMC and Universal, not just to deal with sort of release slots and whatnot, but actual theatre sense. But look, I don't know, man. I hope the theatres survive and we continue to have that experience, because it's something you don't want to lose. It's something
you grow up with, John.
Yeah, you grow up with it, and it's an experience. Nothing like a beautiful booming sound and a beautiful big IMAX screen, or just a regular screen, because I've not been to IMAX in so long, to really envelop you and make the experience all the more richer and enjoyable. So I hope it doesn't go away.
Yeah, fingers crossed, John. But we're going to move on anyway to our next topic now. We forgot to discuss this before we came on air, so I'm going to guess it's James Wan developing a Knight Rider movie reboot. Now, this dropped, I think, Friday. Some YouTube channels out there, bigger ones, have already covered this.
Have the finger on the pulse.
Yeah, we were doing movie reviews, so we can be excused. Knight Rider movie reboot by James Wan is in the works and will feature a present-day take on popular 80s crime fighter and his supercar, which was called KITT, as I recall.
Yes, it was.
Movie adaptation of Knight Rider is in the works from James Wan. This comes in from Screen Rant, by the way. Knight Rider first aired on NBC from 1982 to 1986 and was the Kickstarter to David Hasselhoff's career before his starring role in the hit series Baywatch and his singing career as well.
Yes, in Germany.
That. Created by Glenn A. Larson, Knight Rider starred Hasselhoff as Michael Knight, a crime fighter assisted by his artificially intelligent Pontiac Trans Am KITT, K-I-T-T. Knight Rider would go on to inspire spin-off TV movies, I remember the TV movies and video games, with Hasselhoff even reprising his role in the 1991 TV movie Knight Rider 2000. That was the one I remember.
Yes.
And appearing in an episode of the 2008 revival series. Don't remember that.
And he was in Kung Fury.
That's right. Both projects were
and he was great in it as well.
to lead to a new series that will never pick up. Was that both projects were intended to lead to a new series that were never picked up? That's probably why I never heard of it. And a film adaptation of Knight Rider has been in talks for a while, with different directors' names attached to the project over the years, including Guardians of the Galaxy writer-director James Gunn.
Oh, that would have been great.
And Star Trek's Beyond, Justin Lin. Now Michael and KITT are officially reuniting on the big screen. Now, John, I know this was before your time. It finished 3 years before you were even born.
I've seen it though, Steve.
It's such an iconic series, isn't it? It was a sort of
the theme alone.
Yeah, it was a sort of forerunner to the likes of Street Hawk and Airwolf and all that. It kind of kick-started that whole thing. Michael Knight, cool guy. Yeah.
Knight Industries 2000, Steve. And that's what KITT's an acronym for, incidentally. You can't tell. I just googled that.
Did not know that. I just thought it was called KITT because it was a cool name, but it was a cool car as well. I loved it. I loved the voice as well. I don't know who voiced the car. I can't remember. But I was tuned in every Saturday afternoon. It was over here in the UK. That or the A-Team was sort of the staple diet of the 1980s for the 80s kids. But 1982 to 1986, this only lasted 4 years, this television series. That's unbelievable. For some reason, it felt like a decade. I don't know why.
Hasselhoff did a Dichoffney.
Yeah, he did. Billy Big Boots.
Get too big for his boots and decided, I'm going to have a film career.
But
in Deutschland.
Yeah, so we're talking James Wan here, John.
Yeah.
He's the right guy for
German,
is he the right guy for the job?
I don't know, Stephen. I think it'd be interesting. I didn't realise that James Wan was actually still floating around in the sort of filmmaking spheres. I thought he had become a sort of Warner Brothers version of Kevin Feige, where he became a sort of high-floating producer who had his eyes on creating a sort of Conjuring universe.
Well, it looks like he's teaming up with Michael Clear, John.
Of course, he did direct Aquaman too.
Yeah,
so
I think it's more his team. Spyglass Media Group is teaming up with Atomic Monsters' James Wan. So it's I don't know how much involved he's going to be with the sort of day-to-day running of the making of this movie or anything like that. But certainly his guys are in there involved, and they're teaming up obviously with these other guys. But I like the sound of it. I think if they do it right, it can be done well. The A-Team, they did a film of that 15 years ago, something like that. Liam Neeson was in it.
Recall that,
I think Bradley Cooper, was he in it as well? I'm pretty sure Bradley Cooper. I'll have to look that up when I let you in, John, but it wasn't done right at all. It just didn't have the same feel. I don't want it to be a remake of the television series with all the corniness and stuff like that and having references and all that. But if it's done right, if the tone's right, there is potential there, because it was a good sort of setup. Michael Knight, investigating. Yeah, he's got his car to investigate with, a system. But I think, I don't think it's something that's really aged well. The television series, it was very novelty factor, if I'm being honest. But it's got elements in there. Yeah, but it has got elements in there that could work. I don't know on what level, whether it could be kid-friendly, family-friendly, I don't know.
The detective level could work.
Yeah.
If we can James Wan's involved, he loves his horror. Maybe we can fling some horror elements in as well.
Car, yeah.
Yeah, maybe a slasher in some episodes. Is this going to be a film, or is this an actual TV show?
It's going to be a film, apparently.
A film, that kind of a kiboshes the sort of sort of horror vibe then. Stephen, I mean, it could work. There's potential there. It would ultimately come down to the casting. Who they can get in to perhaps be the face of this movie. Who's going to have the charisma, the balls on them to try and replace David Hasselhoff as the man himself. If you don't get that right, we've seen it with the Predator movie from a couple of years ago. They brought some guy in, I always forget his name. It's a double barrel name, something Boyd or something. He lacked screen presence. He had no charisma. He was no Arnold Schwarzenegger. And the whole movie sort of landed on his shoulders in a sense, and because he wasn't up to task, I'm not saying he was terrible, but he didn't have the screen presence to lead the movie. It just collapsed under the weight. He collapsed under the weight, and the whole movie collapsed as a result. So if you don't get the main casting correct, then it will collapse completely. And I'm not entirely sure if there is an actor out there just now who can play that role like David Hasselhoff played it. So you would have to completely... Well, Bradley... You'd have to restructure the whole movie, essentially, the whole vibe of it.
Ryan Reynolds.
Ryan Reynolds, man. He'd bring a sort of comedic version.
Why not?
That may work, actually. Yeah. Ryan Reynolds doing it, yeah. Again, it'd have to be different, though, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Stephen, I don't recall much about the TV show. I watched it, bits and bobs of it, and I stepped away. I wasn't a huge fan of it. But
we only had 4 channels back in the day,
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure if there was comedic elements in this TV show. If it was
it was kind of light and fluffy, yeah.
Well, maybe you could bring in a Ryan Reynolds and perhaps put a comedic flash on it or something like that. I don't know, and it may work. Certainly, the technology, the idea for the talking car and whatnot, you could up that to a next level with the obvious CG and stuff we've got these days. So I don't know, man. It's potential's there. James Wan's a great mind. He's a great filmmaker, producer, writer. So if you're getting him on board, even if it's just his production company and he has a sort of overseeing hand on it, that's a good start, because that guy will probably have an idea of what to do with the movie, and then it will depend on who they get in to direct it and who they can get to lead it. That will ultimately make the movie a success or a flop. Tends to be, though, that these movies from this time, this era, the 80s and stuff, they're movies of the era. I say it all the time about Back to the Future and stuff. Really hard to recapture the sort of vibe that they had. Robocop was the other one. They tried to reboot that a couple of years ago. It was an absolute disaster.
They also did Starsky and Hutch with Ben Stiller and Owen Wilson. And
really hard.
You're talking about comedy, John. They turned that into a comedy and it didn't work at all. I didn't mind the film. I don't think it's the worst film out there. It's not particularly a very funny film, to be honest with you. But it was such a leap from the Starsky and Hutch television series. You know, Ben Stiller looked like I can't remember, Paul Michael Glazier, I think.
I remember the likeness was eerie.
Yeah, and the cardigans and stuff like that. You know, and the hairdo, the sort of.
But that's where it ended.
Curly hair, but that's exactly.
It's difficult to transition from a TV show from that era into a sort of 2-hour movie and capture all the elements and do it justice and get the nostalgia right, the fan service right, and bring in a new generation of fans. It's really hard to sort of, I don't know, package that to a new audience from a new era, a new way of thinking. It's difficult, man. That's why I don't want to see Back to the Future reboots happening, because they will never get it right.
I think sometimes, and it's excited that I am for something like this to happen, it's because of the period I was born in. You know, I think when these things come up, these projects come up,
it's like He-Man and Flash Gordon.
They are marketed to an aging audience. You know, not a new generation. If you can get anyone from this current generation involved and interested in something that they don't really know anything about, then you're onto a winner. But it doesn't happen that very often, unfortunately.
And again, the key is casting, Stephen. Getting some young actors in. Maybe a Zendaya or something, or someone up and coming. Fire them in. That'll attract a youthful audience in.
Why
and
not?
Then you
Michaela Knight,
Why not? Why not? She's very tall. Very, very tall. She's not quite Hasselhoff level, but Stephen, it's all about just the way you package it, and ultimately the calibre of cast and just crew that they surround this film with, that will really make or break it. I'm usually not for reboots, but certainly I don't think the TV show was that great that you couldn't better it. It's not like one of the classic sort of TV shows from back in the day. It's a sort of cult classic with comedic flourishes, as you did say. They can better it, man. So if you get the right people involved, then it could potentially be a hit.
Well, I do not know if the right people are involved in what we're going to talk about next, John. You probably have more scope on this than myself. I'll explain why in a little moment. But next
try.
Star Trek movie may not use Abrams' cast. Despite previous reports, Noah Hawley's upcoming Star Trek movie would not feature the cast from J.J. Abrams' trilogy if it ever happens. The next Star Trek movie, previously described as Star Trek 4, might not use the cast from J.J. Abrams' trilogy. Paramount and CBS have a thriving stream of Star Trek content on the small screen, but it has been a bit more challenging to figure out the IP's future on the big screen. Abrams rebooted the property in 2009, launching a trilogy of films led by Chris Pine's James Kirk and Zachary Quinto's Spock. These movies started out very well with the box office performances of Star Trek and Star Trek Into Darkness, but interest in the franchise dipped with Star Trek Beyond. The 2016 film had the lowest box office haul of the trilogy and left the future in doubt for a time. Paramount is considering multiple Star Trek movies, and one of them is set to be directed by Legion's Noah Hawley. The film was previously said to be Star Trek 4 and feature at least some of the cast members from Abrams' trilogy, but it appears that it isn't the case anymore. It's quite similar to the sort of X-Men, the closing off of the last lot of X-Men actors. I think I'll probably go along the same way in what I said about that franchise, as it's better to have a clean break. I think Star Trek, John, I'm kind of getting into uncharted territory here now. I don't know if that's the right terminology, but I've never been a fan. Frontier. I've never been a fan of Star Trek. I'm not going to pretend that I'm that interested in Star Trek as an IP, as they call
Stephen,
it.
I was big into it back in the day.
I get and I understand why it's got such a loyal and enormous fan base, John.
Yeah.
And I get why it has had success on the small screen in the original series and the Next Generation and all the other spin-offs that came with it. Well, maybe not all of them. Some of them didn't succeed where the Next Generation did. But when 2009's Star Trek came out, I really enjoyed that film. I really did. Star Trek's always been a funny one with me because was it 1978 the motion picture came out? Something like it, wasn't it? It was a year after, 2 years after Star Wars, I'm pretty sure.
It was in the 70s. There was a gap.
I'm going to say something here, John, and I'll probably get hung for this. I think the problem with that was that they couldn't separate the TV from the cinema. The movie version of it, where you're getting the television actors carrying on into. I'm not saying they're not capable or anything like that. They certainly were, but there was no sort of separation. And a lot of people would mistake it as being a TV movie, which it wasn't. That original film was a big step for that franchise. It was a massive step to, a year or two after Star Wars.
It wasn't bad either. I didn't mind it.
No, it wasn't. It was okay. And with Rafa
not
Khan,
the best one. Rafa Khan's the greatest for me.
I would say is probably the favourite one from Star Trek fans. But for me, I don't know if it, looking back in hindsight, if perhaps they should have separated the TV stuff from the movie stuff. I don't know. I just think it was too samey. But then again, you've got a reliable cast, so you can argue the point. You know what you're getting with this cast. Familiar faces that worked very well on TV, gathered a huge following, etc. I liked the J.J. Abrams first two movies, particularly the first one. I just thought it was a breath of fresh air for that franchise. I think it's something that needed. I think they were lingering on too much with the past, and the past actors. I know that Leonard Nimoy, he appeared, didn't he? He was.
He was from a parallel universe. He was from the original universe, and it splintered off. There was an action, I think it may have been the Romulans or something, created a black hole on Vulcan. I think he had a sort of gripe with the Vulcans. I think they wronged him.
It was pretty
his
neat.
wife died, his family died. They went through the black hole. Old Spock goes into this alternate universe and meets young Spock. Things happen. I think Kirk's dad dies, and it changes things irrevocably. Yeah. So it was a neat little way to sort of reboot
decent, John,
and not shite upon sort of 40, 50 years worth of canon.
And
so that was neat.
And I thought that was the best way to do it. J.J. Abrams is famous as well for rebranding an aging franchise as well, giving it new life.
Did it with Mission Impossible.
Yeah.
Also did it with Star Wars.
Yeah.
And then he buggers off, and he's done it again with Star Trek. He
starts things.
He starts things, has an issue with finishing things.
Yeah.
But a man after my own heart, because I have terrible issues with finishing things as well, be it books, TV shows, anything.
Yeah.
I start them, but I just can't let go. He has no issue letting
No.
go. He just buggers off and does something new and leaves it to other people. In this case, it was what's his name? I actually had the name up. The director of Star Trek Beyond, but I know Peg penned it. Justin Lin took over. Stephen, I kind of agree with this, man. Look, we're going off on tangents here.
Yeah, I've got to go off on tangents,
No. I will go off on tangents as well. Don't worry about it. But I'll bring it back briefly. I think this is correct. That they go off and do something different.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with having splintered movies within the Star Trek franchise. We've seen it with Marvel. We've seen it with DC. They're doing a Batman trilogy. They've got Wonder Woman. They've got Flashpoint. They've got Aquaman. Different things. Joker. They all exist in different sort of universes, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with a Noah Hawley Star Trek movie existing in a different timeline with a completely different cast. By all accounts, we're going to try and get in Chris Hemsworth, I think, to play Kirk's dad, and they'd have him come in, and it'd be a different sort of vibe, completely a different story set in a different timeline again, potentially. I don't know, because he died in the first movie, I'm pretty sure. So I'm not adverse to him getting off and doing something different. I would like to see this cast come back though, because I think Carol Urban, Zachary Quinto, I think it is, Chris Pine. I can't recall off the top of my head who the rest of them are. Obviously Simon Pegg's in there. I think they're really, really... Zoe Saldana played Gamora. Not Gamora.
She played
Uhura.
Yeah.
I think there's scope to use that cast again. They're so good in terms of looks, likeness to the original Star Trek cast. And then you've got the sort of chemistry they have as well. I think it'd be wrong to just throw that away. You bring these guys back for another movie if it's at all possible. We don't have to have JJ there. We can have other directors come in. Perhaps Simon Pegg would like to try his arm at directing. Maybe he can convince his old friend Edgar Wright to come in and do a Star Trek movie.
That would be interesting.
If we were talking about Tarantino doing Star Trek, why not have Edgar Wright come in with quick cuts and have a vibe? But I don't know. something like that would be very cool. I'd like to see that. I'm not adverse to Noah Hawley though, getting off and doing his own thing. I can't sit here and say I know much about the guy.
No.
He's got a very, very brief career as a director. It only started 5 years ago. More fame for directing 3 episodes of Fargo. In all honesty, I think he's more famed as being a writer. And again, he worked on Fargo. Fargo was a magnificent TV show. So if he's worked as a writer on that, certainly he knows what he's doing with writing. Directing, a little bit more hit and miss. So I don't know about this guy. I don't know about his credentials about coming in and doing it. I don't know if he's a Star Trek fan. A lot of Star Trek fans hated the J.J. Abrams reboot. They thought it was blasphemous, that it was too shiny. They were trying to do Star Wars meets Star Trek, and it felt wrong to them. They like it being rooted in realism and being a little bit more meaty with mythos and stuff. They thought this was too airy. It was too superficial. They were trying to bat for the sort of popular demographics. I really enjoyed it. I've loved all the new Star Trek movies.
I would put myself in that demographic, though, John.
Most people are not out and out Trekkies, Stephen. I'm not. I loved watching the Next Generation when I was younger. But 5 years ago, I seen bits and bobs of the original Star Trek series. I went back and watched that. Really love it. It's different. It's almost like Doctor Who from back in the day.
Theatrical,
really cheap budget, but they did well with the cast and just set design and stuff. Amazing cast. DeForest Kelly, obviously Leonard Nimoy, and the Shat himself. They were amazing, man. Those three were just magic, the way they bounced off of each other.
And that was my point, John.
And that's why you can't ruin that new cast, because they've got that same vibe.
But that was my point about the late 70s original film as well, because you had those guys invested in those characters. It was a kind of a double-edged sword, if you like, for the franchise, where they could have went down the road of separating television series from a movie release, but I mean, we're talking the 1960s into the 70s for the television series. I don't know, a lot of people might have thought, the cast was maybe too old by this point. Very much like...
Well, Shatner was about 30 odds when the TV show started.
Yeah,
so he wasn't young.
He was probably in his mid-50s by this point for the feature film, but...
and obviously Leonard Nimoy was he was doing directing. He was doing double duty for a lot of those movies, the late 70s ones. So... they're very multi-talented, Stephen. I don't know if I'd have liked them to recast the original. I just think there was something about that. If you took that away, I think it would have been... you'd have lost something sort of, I don't know, tangible from it. So, I mean, that was to cater to the OG sort of Star Trek fandom. these new ones want to cater to a new one. That's why they split it off. They're doing TV shows. I've not really watched them. They brought out Picard. I've yet to watch that. Apparently very good.
Yeah.
So they've already got things in different universes. So I don't see any reason why we can't get another Star Trek movie that's not Star Trek 4.
Exactly, John. I mean, I wouldn't know when the whole Star Trek v Star Wars thing started and all that. I'm not really that interested in that kind of thing. But you've got to admire the way Star Trek have handled it for the last 50 years. They've stuck to their formula. They've not been tempted to go the way of Star Wars. If anything, Star Wars is actually going the opposite way from what Star Trek. They're starting to branch out in television series now after doing their feature films. So it's a sort of mirror opposite. But
it was Gene Roddenberry, wasn't it? He was a writer. So he had a great mind. And Stephen, the final thing I'd say, I find it very interesting how many things Star Trek and Star Wars have actually got right from a sort of astronomy I should say, not astrology, that's card reading and stuff, shysters. From an astronomy sort of viewpoint, binary stars and whatnot, they've got so many things right over the years. The moon planet next to the gas giant, this was rubbish. There's been science fiction back in the 70s and whatnot. Now they've been proven right, very much on the money, these guys. So ahead of their time, George Lucas and Gene Roddenberry.
Oh, definitely, John. But we'll move on now to our next topic. I'm going to wait till it comes up because I'm not entirely sure I've got this right in order. I have. Okay. It's all about
Stephen, I've flung you under the bus.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. I've got my peripheral vision here, John. I can see the corner of my eye. But Hulk's always angry scene in stunning hand-drawn flipbook animation. Now, people might think we're grasping at straws here with that headline, John, but we're big fans of this scene. We're big fans of animation as well. And when I saw this, I flipped out. Pardon the pun. But this was amazing. Absolutely outstanding. What's happened is they've reimagined this scene from the first Avengers movie. And they've combined the audio from the scene with impressive flipbook animation. Now, when I watched this, my jaw dropped. It did remind me a bit of that has Take On Me video.
I will play it, Stephen, with no sound, Welsh you're speaking.
It is absolutely amazing. This is something I really appreciate. This is something that
for some reason it's not playing.
That's okay.
That's a shame.
It's fine. It's okay.
You know what I'll do, Stephen? I'll reload it and we'll try and get it to work because it really is impressive.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just that scene where he turns into the Hulk. It's one of the most iconic moments in the film, if not in the MCU. I would say it is. This is Bruce Banner's moment, similar to Thor's moment in Infinity War.
Yeah.
It's up there with it, but that to me, I mean, that's talent. That's a
comic book level talent.
Yeah, and it's just the way that's animated. I think it took them. It tells you at the very end. I think it's something like 90 days or something like that.
It's crazy.
But 95 days to complete this video and 62 days to finish it.
Wow.
1,093 drawings involved in that. So what's your take on this, John? I know it's not really much to talk about.
No, Stephen, I'll speak about this gladly.
John, we went to see Avengers Assemble, as it was called over here at the time in 2012, and that scene for me was like hairs in the back of your neck.
Yeah.
Just the way it was displayed, and it was a big reveal as well, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And sort of Bruce Banner's sort of
what makes him turn into Hulk?
Yeah, exactly.
And you'd think it'd be out and out anger, but it turns out it's not. It's controlling the rage, and it's actually him going the opposite way that sends him into that sort of Hulk state. He's always angry. It's when he does the opposite, he turns into Hulk. I loved it, man. It was a magnificent scene, and it just showcased not Bruce Banner, Mark Ruffalo's amazing acting talent as Bruce Banner.
Yeah.
That's why you bring a guy of that calibre in. We were speaking about him the other day. He was ready for quitting as an actor. This is an Oscar-nominated actor. Everything he puts his hand to, be it drama, anything in between he can do. And it really showcased his acting in that scene. I love this animation. I think it's magnificent. As a fan of stop motion, Leica Studios and whatnot, and the old Wallace and Gromit stuff, the sort of genius it goes into taking and manipulating, and obviously the old cartoons as well did it scene by scene using different pictures, subtly changing the painstaking sort of process that is to make that happen and make it move. And I thought that was absolutely sublime. I tip my hat to whoever it is that's involved in that. I don't even know. I think it's by DP Art Drawing, but superb, man. And again, he just captured through a sort of pencil drawing,
John.
multiple pencil drawings, the magic of that scene.
Sandro's asking
Yes.
if you can sing "Take on Me" live.
No, I can't. No, I can't sing. You kidding me, man?
No, I don't know the words.
I don't have the voice for that, sadly.
I would say it's before my time, but it wasn't. I think I was 9 when
Very
this
high
came out.
voice.
Yeah,
They were Norwegian, weren't they?
Yeah, very talented group, John. And it's
Yeah.
an iconic
Very,
song as
very
well.
tight trousers on.
But no,
I have
sorry,
shorts
Sandro,
on,
can't
Sandro.
sing, and we're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers, not lose 1,000. So sorry about that. But we'll move on to our final topic, John. Sandro throwing us under the bus there. Rocky IV director's cut, teased by Sylvester Stallone. Sylvester Stallone is now teasing work on the director's cut of his popular 1985 Rocky installment, Rocky IV, with a brand new clip from the film. I watched this, John. I think it was on
Fantastic again, yeah.
Instagram, I think, might have been.
It was.
And I don't know how many times I've watched Rocky IV. There was 2 big films in 1985 for me, Back to the Future and Rocky IV.
Oh.
And you can say what you want about the film, and it's sort of corniness and cheesiness and stuff like that during the Cold War, etc. The marketing for that film was probably the best out of all the Rocky films. Those 2 boxing gloves colliding. Do you remember that? I always remember the trailer for that. The Soviet Union glove.
I've never seen the trailer.
I don't know if it was a trailer, but there was a TV spot, John, which showed you the 2 gloves colliding like that.
That sounds
and
good.
it was fantastic, and it was the iconic Rocky tune as well. In fact, I think it might be at the start of the film, if I'm not mistaken.
It may be.
I might have to watch it again, but it's interesting to see scenes that you've never seen before as well, and this is what we get in this clip. You made a good point as well. I'll let you in and you can talk about it, John. But it's obviously about Stallone, and he's I don't know if this
genius.
Was this his directorial debut? I'm not really sure.
But did he not do the original Rocky? He may not have done. I may be wrong. Did he not win an Oscar?
Yeah, he did. He did, John. You're absolutely right. But you kind of take your head out of the
sorry. No. It was John G. Avildsen. The screenplay was by Stallone.
Screenplay, yeah. He when you watch this, you actually do forget that he's directing this film as well.
Yeah.
It's a scene between him and Dolph Lundgren, and it's like a press conference prior to obviously the bout. But you forget, and I'm convinced that Sylvester Stallone is staying in character at this point, because it's the rage in the guy's face. Yeah. But he's talking to Dolph Lundgren as a friend, but he's still got the rage in his face while he's directing him. It's a great scene.
Yeah, can you try this? I think it's I Am Unbeatable, and then Look at Me.
Yeah,
Stephen, it's magnificent to see behind the sort of the scenes at how this film was
be defeated.
I cannot be defeated, and then Look at Me.
I don't know how that sounded like.
That's the way.
That sounded like Black Panther for some reason. I don't know why.
Like one of the Hans Gruber baddies from Die Hard. Schnell, bitte.
It was terrible. That's why I'm not an actor, John.
Yeah. Steve, I'll just continue this German theme all the way through.
Yeah.
No, I won't, because I don't know enough German, sadly. I'm very, very poor at German. Only little phrases and whatnot. But I digress, man. It was cool just seeing how he operated as a director behind the scenes. This is a guy who's just synonymous with the character, synonymous with acting. So to see him sort of manipulating the scenes and telling them, can you try this one, can you try that one? Absolutely amazing to see that behind the scenes look at this movie. How this is going to play into the sort of director's cut, I presume the reason he's shown us this is because he's going to add extra little bits onto scenes from the movie like this, where it's maybe slightly altered dialogue or something like that. Because obviously, what was that movie we watched? Donnie Darko. I watched the director's version of it before we reviewed it, and there was little additional bits, but it was
strange,
subtle.
Yeah.
But in a way, that kind of ruined the experience of Donnie Darko, because it made the little shithead friend of Donnie's even more aggressive and even more unlikable. I hope he gets the balance right when he's adding in additional little things which weren't in the movie. If it's something like this, though, I mean, it's going to be so subtle, you'll probably not even tell the difference. But I just really enjoyed seeing behind the scenes, seeing Stallone when he looked like Stallone.
Yeah,
doesn't look like some strange melted face guy.
His mum, yeah.
Nowhere near as bad as his mum yet. But it's very cool seeing him and Lundgren just starring, man, in their prime. Absolute units, the two of them. Magnificent look behind the scenes. Enjoyed it thoroughly.
Yeah, it was great, yeah.
Yes, but look, I'm done. Steve, I'm done before I start stuttering and stammering like a stuttering Steve. So I'm going to round the show up. What is your guys' thoughts? That was just terrible. What is your guys' thoughts?
If he dies, he
dies. I'm getting into Ivan Drago. What were your thoughts, guys? There you go. I'll restructure the way I'm speaking. on the headline of the show tonight, which was all about AMC losing $500 million due to theatre closures. Do you think this is signalling the end of times for the theatre-going experience? You think the theatre companies will survive to the end of this pandemic, or will it be a completely different way of life, maybe getting in bed with studios and whatnot? You can tell us what your thoughts are down below about that. You can also tell us about James Wan doing Knight Rider reboots and all the other array of topics we spoke about. I'm not going to go through every single one because there was 5 in there, and to be quite frank, it'll be the longest goodbye ever. So I'm going to round it up on that note. You can comment below and let us know what your thoughts are on the array of topics we touched upon on today's show. You can also like the video if you've enjoyed it. And you can subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content like this. I'm seeing down below there's a little comment there, Stephen. Before we go, I may briefly touch on it. Something about director's cuts.
Yep, Sandro's, he's so tired of director's cuts this way. I don't like to waste my money in the theatres. Fair point. Well,
don't waste your money in theatres, guys. Waste your money. Well, not waste your money, just waste your time watching us instead. There you go. On that note, bye-bye, guys. See you after.